Hey guys, welcome back to another wave shooter tutorial. This is going to be tutorial number 8, and we are going to be working on fixing the scoring when the player dies. The score didn't get reset. We are also going to be setting it up so the player can't leave the screen, this window area, and we are also going to be setting it up so we have screen shake on the camera. So, sorry that I didn't get any tutorials out recently. I'm going to be doing my best to pump them out as quickly as possible for right now because I haven't been doing much. So let's get into it. Okay, so we need to make it so the score on the screens gets set back to 0 when the game gets restarted. To do this, we're going to be going in our arena script, and in the ready function, we're going to be setting global.points equals 0. That way it gets set back to 0. So we can test that right now. I'm going to shoot a couple of enemies. And then I get hit by one, and it goes back to 0. The reason why it wasn't getting set back to 0, because usually when you restart a scene, everything gets set back to its default value that you created it. The global is a singleton, so it's ran through every scene, and that scene does not get counted when everything restarts. That scene keeps going. So that variable would never get reset unless we manually set it back to 0. So that's why we have to set it back to 0 for the global points. Now let's make it so the player can't leave the screen, because if I run the game right now, you can see that the player could just walk off the screen. And I have a simple solution for this. So go into the player script, and in that player script, what we're going to be doing is we're going to do global position equals clamp global position, and the minimum we want, actually do global position.x, and the minimum we want is 0, and then the max, which we're going to be setting it as our screen size. So you can check your screen size by going in project settings and going back to window, and that's 640. So we're going to be setting our max clamp to 640 and our minimum to 0. We're going to be doing the same for the Y position. Go position.y equals clamp global position.y. We're going to set it to 0, and then we have to check our height of our window, which is 360. So this might be different on yours if you set it up differently, but for this project, if you're following along, it should be 640 by 360. Now you can see when you run it, the player does get stopped, but the problem is, it's like he can go halfway off the screen. You see that? So I'm just going to explain what clamp does if you guys didn't know. Clamp basically sets it so this is our minimum value that this can be set to, and this is our max. If it exceeds our max value, it just sets it to this value. If it exceeds the minimum value, it sets it to this value. So this is a really easy way of keeping the player on the screen. But the problem is, if we go into our player, it's clamping this point. So it's technically not going past 0, 0, but the edges of the sprite are. We want to fix that. We can figure out the size of our sprite, because that's what we're going to need to know what the minimum and maximum values should actually be so the player is actually shown on screen. So you can see our scale on the player is 1.5 by 1.5, and our texture sprite is 16 by 16. So if we go in our calculator and we do 16 multiplied by 1.5, it is 24. So we want to clamp at 24, 24 is our minimum. So I can run our arena scene again, and you can see when I go up to the top of the screen, I don't actually exceed the screen. So now going back to our player script, let's do that for the same as the max values too. So to do this, we're going to be doing 640 minus 24, which is 616. And then we're going to be doing the same for 360 minus 24, which is going to be 336. And now it should work on all sides of the screen. The player will be on the screen, and he will not be able to leave the screen. So I think that works pretty well for clamping the player so he doesn't get outside the screen. And now for the fun part. We're going to be setting it up so we have screen shake. We get that juicy little screen shake when you kill an enemy. Okay, so for setting up a camera, it's pretty straightforward. We're going to be adding a new node. It's going to be a camera 2D. Make sure it's camera 2D, not camera 3D. That wouldn't really work for our game. you're going to see that the camera is actually, this box is our camera border. And there's a couple of problems with it. First, it's not current. So we have to check current to be on. So it's going to be used as our current camera. It's also not centered to the player. So you're not going to be seeing this. You're just going to be seeing half of the score. I can show this right now. If we press play button right now, you're seeing the enemy spawn in, but you're not seeing the rest of the screen. So to fix this, we can look back at our project width and height. So now we're going to divide the width and height of our window by 2. And we're going to be setting that as our transform. So I'm going to be 320 is the X value. So 180 will be our Y value. And there you go. You have the window perfectly centered. Now you can do this a different way. If I set my position back to 0, 0, and we do fixed top left, you have our margin that's set back there. I find it easier to actually use top left instead of centered. So we're going to be using top left instead of using centered. But if you needed the camera position to be actually in the center of the camera, then use drag center and then just set its position on half of the window. We're going to be going with fixed top left for now because that's just easier and we don't need the position of our camera to be in the middle. So now we're going to be adding a new script to our camera 2D. And we're just going to press create. So a couple of things need to happen when we want to cause a screen shake. When the enemy dies, we want to cause a screen shake. So the enemy needs to be able to communicate with the camera node. And usually when we have two nodes communicate with each other, we could use signals, but we usually just set up a variable for them. So I'm going to be setting up another variable. We're going to be calling it camera inside the global script. We're going to set equal to now, meaning that's non-existent. We're going to go back to our camera script. And we're going to be setting up a couple of variables. First variable is going to be screen shake start. We're going to set that default by default and shake intensity. We're going to be setting that to 0. I forgot the N. Intensity. Then we're going to be setting up our ready function. And we're going to be setting our global camera to ourself. Then we're going to be saying an exit tree function. We're saying global camera to null. So now we're going to be setting up our process functions to do function underscore process. For our screen shake, I'm wanting it to also kind of zoom in a bit. I think it adds a bit more to the screen shake, but it's going to be very minimal when it zooms in. It's not going to be much. So to do this, we're going to actually be lerping the zoom to a vector 2. And we're going to be setting that to 1, 1. Because we want to set our zoom back to 1, but it's going to increase when the screen shake happens. So it'll probably go like 1.2 or something. I don't know, maybe 1.1, maybe something lower. And it'll go up to 1.1, but then the process function will kick in, and it'll start interpolating the zoom back to 1, 1. And I'm going to use it by 30%. So yeah, it's interpolating our camera zoom back to 1, 1 at 30%. So now we're going to do an if statement. If screen shake start is equal to true. Then what we're going to do here, so I'm going to full screen this. Global position plus equals vector 2 random range negative shake intensity positive shake intensity, and then we're going to be adding a comma here for the second argument, random range negative shake intensity positive shake intensity. So there's probably a better way of writing this, but this is the way I found, so I guess we'll be using it. If our shake intensity was 5 right here, it would be in between -5 and 5 for X value. Same with our Y value, but these two values will be different. There's a small chance that they might be the same. It's actually really small, but they are most likely going to be different values, and this is going to cause the camera to shake. And this isn't the best camera shaking system out there. There is definitely better ways of doing it. This is just what works for me in this project. I've seen people even use like Perlin noise to do a screen shake, and they would actually do it very well with Perlin noise. It'd make a more realistic screen shake effect. But for now, we're just going to be using these random number generator things. So I think that's going to be just fine. We also have to multiply it by delta. Reason 4 is so the screen shake will happen no matter what frame rate you're on. It'll happen at the same speed. If we were at lower frame rate and it was processing it a lot faster, we want to make sure that it's going to be moving at the same speed. But you're most likely going to be at 60 as your frame rate. So now we're going to be setting up a function to cause the screen shake. So this function is going to be screen shake. It's going to take an intensity variable and a time variable. So before we set up this function, I'm just going to write pass so we don't get any errors. And I'm going to save the script. We're going to need a timer underneath this camera. So add a node underneath it. We're going to add a timer. And make sure you drag and drop it. Make sure it's a child of the camera. And we're going to call it screen shake time. And we're just going to set it to 1 shot. And we're going to connect the signal of the screen shake timer back to the camera 2D. Make sure you have the camera 2D selected and then press connect. Well, what's eventually going to happen is when we cause our screen shake, our timer is going to be setting this time value. And when our timer goes off, we're going to be telling it screen shake start equals false, meaning we don't want it to screen shake anymore. So this time value is just going to cause it to stop screen shaking at a certain point in time. So in this function, we are going to be doing zoom equals vector2 1 1 minus, these are the values I found that worked well. We're going to do vector2 intensity multiplied by 0.02. And we're going to do another argument in our vector2, which is our y value. Intensity, it's going to be the same thing, multiplied by 0.02. What this basically does is now we're going to be setting our zoom. It's going to zoom in a bit when the intensity goes up. So we're going to be using like 2% of our intensity. And that's just a value I found that works pretty well. We can change it later if it doesn't look that great. But for right now, we'll just leave it like that. We're also going to be saying shake intensity equals intensity, because you see right here is the intensity argument. So when we call this function in the enemy, we're going to be calling screen shake and then the intensity that we want and the time that we want. And we're just basically setting our intensity variable that's right here to that intensity, so then we can actually screen shake to the corresponding intensity. So now we're going to be setting up the screen shake timer. So we're going to be doing $, screen shake time. That's getting our screen shake timer node that's below this node using the $. We do wait time equals time. So it's the same thing as right here. We're just setting its wait time to this argument, the second argument. Now we're going to be setting screen shake time dot start. So now it's going to start the timer, and we're going to be telling it that screen shake start. The screen shake has started, and set that to true. After we call this function from the enemy, this will all initialize it, and then once it's going, it's going to be lerping the camera. It's going to be adding to the position, and that's all we need. So now that we have the camera set up, it's not going to screen shake just yet. We need to set it up so the enemy, when the enemy dies, that it starts the screen shake. So go to enemy.gd, and when HP is less than or equal to 0, we're going to be checking if global.camera, remember we set that as a reference, is not equal to null. Global.camera dot start screen shake. And remember, this start screen shake is a function that's right here. Actually, we didn't call it start screen shake. We call it screen shake. So we're just going to copy that, paste it right here. So global.camera.screen shake. Now we have to have the intensity that we want to shake at. So I think, I don't know, let's try something around 20. We're using delta in mind, so I'm going to be setting the camera back to 0.1, but since we're using delta, we need to do a much bigger value because delta is going to make that value a lot smaller. So this might equate to moving like, I don't know, 0.5 pixels. But delta is going to be multiplied to this, which is going to make this value a lot lower. Now let's run it and see how low our screen shake is going to be. I think it's just the zoom. It's not shaking very much. So to fix this, let's go in our camera. We're going to be setting our zoom a lot lower. We're just going to set to 0.02. Looks pretty good. I think I have to set the screen shake value a bit bigger. But you can see that it's actually, the zoom, I can show it right now. The zoom is happening, but what's happening with the zoom is it's scaling from that point, which is what I was talking about before. So when I said that we could just use top left, I kind of lied, because now we have to use drag center because it's not zooming correctly. So just set the anchor mode to drag center. Now we need the halfway values for our window. I believe mine was 320 by 180. You might need to go in your project settings and divide your height and width by 2 to figure that out. But now we have our camera centered, and it should work still because we're just adding our position. We're not setting it. Yep, it's working pretty well. And I'm going to be setting the screen shake a bit bigger. Let's go 60. And you can experiment with the screen shake value. So it's cool because the camera will zoom in more when the camera shakes more, because it's using the same intensity. So now you're seeing it that it's shaking a lot more than it was before. And that feels pretty good. There's a slight problem though, because the camera doesn't reset back to its original position. It kind of just goes back to the position that was last moved in. To fix this, go back in the camera, and once it's finished screen shaking, when the screen shake timer goes off, we want to set global position equals vector 2, and we're going to be using the same values that we started with our position, 320 by 180. So set it to 320 by 180. And now we can hit the play button. I can move around, shoot enemies. We got some screen shake going. It's feeling pretty good to kill every enemy. And you can't walk off the screen, and enemies can kill you. So there you go. That basically sums up this tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys also learned something from it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.